Thank you so much, Kyle. I think we'll have plenty of time for questions during the break and during panels. But now it is my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, and the last one before our coffee break. So this is Monica Tariuc. She is director with Global Employer Services Practices with Deloitte, and she has a consistent experience that covers, among other, salary tax, social security contribution, international mobility of employees, remuneration and collaboration structures, application of tax incentives in IT. I think this is a very hot topic. I heard some people, oh, not again, it's something that changed. How many people are affected by this IT new taxation? How many organizations were, yeah, okay, so we have, yeah. So she coordinates the Romanian streams on various global engagement, handling all aspects concerning the mobile workforce of multinational, both inbound and outbound population. Monica is a technology and people enthusiastic and was involved in the design and implementation of various solutions for cross-countries tracking and reporting. And she's recognized, talking about reputation, by clients and colleagues for her technical knowledge, her ability to coordinate large accounts, her genuine interest for improving daily processes, and for her out-of-the-box thinking and innovative solutions. So I think it will be a great presentation. Just bear with me 1 second to open up the presentation. Okay.
Thank you all. Very nice being here today with you. I must look like a fraud because I'm actually a tax consultant, but I still am a people enthusiastic, and I love working with human resources department and with leadership in general and find out more and more about these topics. And the presentations so far were very inspiring for me. We will be discussing about I would say 15 minutes, because I also hate being between you and coffee breaks, so most probably it will be shorter than scheduled. But we will be discussing about the 2023 Global Human Capital Trends Report issued by Deloitte. We issue this on a yearly basis for a long time now, and it's very interesting if you look back like 10 or 15 years ago to see how much the trends have actually changed and how many of the trends we considered for 5 or 10 years ago are actually happening now. And actually it seems we are moving at a faster pace than we expected years back. I have a couple of slides prepared, of course, sorry. Let's call them dashboards. They will have a lot of figures, they will have a lot of numbers, graphs, and so on. But before that, I would like to share with you a few thoughts that I had after reading the report, which, by the way, is available to public, so you can find it on the internet. You can read it. It's not a short read. It's more than 100 pages, but it provides a lot of meaningful explanations about what the trends would be in human capital. So I'll start with my favorite, skills replace jobs. Why is this my favorite? Because I might be a perfect living example of skills replacing jobs. I graduated from the Economic Studies Academy. Yeah, I'm theoretically in international relationships. I got a job as an internship in tax. I'm still a tax consultant. Modelina exposed me. But here I am. Yeah, I'm discussing with HR professionals about human capital trends, so this must mean I have been doing something right, or still doing. What does it mean? Skills replace jobs. Most probably exactly what all of you think. Organizations no longer need to consider job descriptions, no longer need to consider how to draft, let's say, a job position in itself, but they need to consider the skills that their employees have. And a growing number of organizations consider basing work and workforce decision on skills, and not on all of these like titles and degrees and so on. How this approach will align here in Romania with the provisions of the very stiff Romanian legislation, I think this is a discussion to have with a couple of lawyers, and not sure if we have any present, but most probably it will be difficult from this perspective to implement this in the Romanian legislation and in our ways of working, and we'll also see that on the slides. Well, the fact is that we all get more and more feedback from our employees and their concerns regarding that they no longer find their place in the organization, that they misidentifying the added value of the work they are performing for us. They then no longer find a place in, they do not longer feel that their skills are exercised to the best extent. So in other words, they feel that they are not reaching their full potential. And companies can address these concerns by focusing on skills rather than on job positions. And actually, 93% of the respondents find this important to very important. So this is something that the companies and organizations seek to look forward. So in the absence, if we were to not shift to skills from job position, what will actually happen is that we will limit our own talent, the talent pool that we have in our organization, by limiting to people with certain backgrounds or with certain job history, where actually we might find the proper skills in anyone else that we already have inside. The second thought that I might be worth sharing that I thought when reading the report was about the word of less is more, that we hear more and more often. The interesting thing is that my grandmother is actually a math teacher. She has 82, 83 years old already, but on a daily basis she solves these math problems. And every time we go there, she asks us a math problem that we do not longer know how to resolve. But if less is more, more is less also. And my thought here, I do not have an answer, so this is just something I'm sharing, is how do we tackle this equation of less is more and more is less, when actually all the businesses at this stage are required to do more with less. You know? This is something that really struck to me after reading the report. And finally, it's the title of our report that you can also see on the slides, is New Fundamentals for a Boundary-Less World. The first thought, boundary-less, freedom, right? You have no boundaries, you are free. The immediate second thought I have was fear. And I think this is a natural response that people have at boundaries falling apart. You do no longer know where your playground starts and where your playground ends. 10,000 respondents to our survey said that the greatest barrier to achieving organizational outcomes are them being overwhelmed by too many changes coming all at once. So it comes back also to this fear of boundaries falling apart. But is boundaryless actually about no boundaries at all, or about new boundaries that are actually built together? Because co-creation enhances meaningful collaboration. And this can be done only if we do accept that the traditional boundaries that kept everything together up until now actually will no longer exist. So we have to create new rules, new boundaries. And most probably not call them boundaries anymore, for people not to think about them like this. But this fact alone and this title alone made me think about an exercise that I had years back within a working group, where we were asked to create a perfect world we would like to live in on a deserted island where we had all the resources. And the interesting fact is that discussing within the group, actually what we did was to create rules and to find some skills in people. And we felt the need to have someone that will enforce law, someone that will save lives, someone that will, I don't know, share faith, someone that will help with the organization of us as a society. So basically what I'm doing now, I'm referring to skills, not job position, because at that moment we are actually discussing about policeman, priest, doctor, mayor, and so on, right? But the interesting thing is that none of us actually felt any different or constrained about the fact that now we have rules and now we have all these authorities because we co-created them. And I think this is where we need to actually go together. We need to co-create some boundaries that will no longer be called boundaries, but that anyone everyone in the organization would accept. So, before moving to the actual slides, I would like to reinforce the 3 words I have for today: skills, more or less, and another less, boundary less. So it's all about that today. Here is the content of the presentation. Of course, that we need to start with some demographics to see who exactly from Romania answered our survey. And afterwards, we'll be discussing about job and skills, the already customary technology topic, data ownership, and leadership. The dashboards will be showing the results for Romania, but I will be comparing them where relevant with the scorings at global level that I have on my charts. So, starting with demographics. Whoa, I don't think I'll be able to see the figures here, okay? So, how we read this slide is, here we have the question, you know, everywhere, and here we have the answers marked here. I'm sure that most probably those sitting in the back do not have the best vision, but maybe we'll share the presentation afterwards. So basically for Romania, we had 66 respondents representing both global, regional, and national companies, half of them with yearly revenues of above $50 million. Most responses came from, I think this is on the next slide, most responses came from finance and human resources specialists. Almost 80% of the organizations have more than 100 employees and 50% more than 1,000 employees. In what regards the sector and the industry the companies activating, you can see that we have a pretty nice spread. So I would say that the survey is relevant for most of the industries. What is interesting on this slide, or on the next one, I guess, no, is this question here. Yeah? So we have which of the following types of workers, in addition to full part-time, does your organization currently use the most? Yeah? And this takes us to the workforce ecosystem. When asked that, you can see that more than 50% responded that they use consultants or freelancers, and 35% said they have outsourced service teams, most probably in support services, as we can see all over the market. At global level, for example, the answers to the question have a similar score. You know? In what regards gig workers, at global level we have 25%, and a small 5% on crowdsources workers. Jobs and skills, or skills replacing jobs, as I said earlier. Even smaller writing. Great, so what are the main drivers to use or optimize the workforce ecosystem? This is the question. You know? This is the question here about the top drivers. First, what is a workforce ecosystem? I think we all already know that because we are considering expanding the types of workers we use. So a workforce ecosystem is an ecosystem that not solely uses full-time or part-time own employees, but also uses freelancers, contractors, gig workers, and any other type of resources that traditionally are considered as being out of the organization. This would be the workforce ecosystem. As a side note, only 60% of the organization consider that they are ready to use workforce ecosystems. 16, not 60. And only 17% consider they are ready to use worker agencies, which is pretty low. Returning to the top drivers on the slide, finding the skills to meet current business needs places first with 41%. One of the follow-up questions here, I think it would be if the companies actually have enough employee data to identify if those missing skills are not actually sitting in their company right now, but they are unable to spot them. On the next slide, we see that half of the respondents consider that talent across function of the organization performs well or even better than well. Very well, which is very satisfying to see. But when it comes to barriers in optimizing the workforce ecosystem by comparing with the global results of the study, Romania scores 10% less on culture, but 10% more on strategy, which I find very interesting. When those that enhanced already their pool of talent to workforce ecosystem, and we can see that in, let me see. We can see that here they already observed and experienced benefits in the area of financial performance, pretty high score, 41%, but also in more opportunities for workers to find meaning in their work, one of the most raised concerns that we get for our employees nowadays. At global level, the scores on increased brand reputation, for example, are higher than in Romania, much higher. So what we expect in this area is to see an increase in the following years on the local market as well. Which of the following is the most important attribute in creating the future workplace for workers to thrive? And here we can see that the preferred answer is leadership. Leadership, 63%, very high, followed by the ways of working with 47%. These are the areas where Romanian local companies are looking at, and they are not very different from what we see from the survey that is happening at a global level. It is interesting to see, however, that at the global level, for example, Romania, by comparing to local, Romania is not actually focusing on the location of work. At global level, the location of work is 50% higher. So abroad, they are focusing more on where the employee should sit. And what we see more and more in practice is that younger employees are very concerned about place of work and working schedule, working hours, and they have these genuine difficulties to understand why they need to travel to work, why they need to lose their time in traffic, why they need to be at a specific hour because they can do their work outside regular office hours and so on. Okay, reimagining the work itself. It's represented here on the slide in dark blue. Yeah? So reimagining the work itself as a response in building the attributes scores very low. You can see that it's a very small part of the entire color scheme on the lower side of the slide. However, redesigning existing work processes and activities is very high. And this is an indicator of the interest in reshaping the ways of working towards enhanced use of the workforce ecosystem I was discussing about earlier. Let's say that we are not the boldest, but we are taking some steps in that direction to improve and enhance. Returning to barriers, incentive and rewards and leadership commitment actually score the same. 22.22% of the respondents are placing them in the top 3 barriers they are meeting in their organization. To address both, it requires a big change in the organizational mindset. So most probably this is something that the organizations in Romania will focus on in the next couple of years. The question that they answered to was, what barriers have you observed in creating a future workplace where your workers can thrive? Yeah? So these would be the 2 areas to work on. In terms of benefit for those who have implemented such systems, increased financial performance shows up again, as I mentioned earlier, but also increased retention of employees. And I know that this is something which that most companies are challenged by at this stage, retention of employees. Moving on to technology, what we can see, or at least part of you that sit in the front can see on the dashboard, by looking slowly at the colors, at the color coding, let's say, is that organizations expect a total different picture in 2 to 4 years from now, which is represented here, than they do currently. So the question is, in your organization, how are humans, technology, and teams driving outcomes? And here are the responses for current status, and here are the responses for the next 2 to 4 years. And you can see only by the colors, not necessarily by the figures, how much they changed. You know? So the answers remain the same. If leveraging communication technology, it's currently the first one that you can see in green here. You can see it at the bottom of the list for the next 2 or 4 years, and I think this is a huge change. Let me see if I have some data from global. In what regards the drivers that we would focus on in 2 or 4 years from now, technology anticipating needs and nudging workers and teams to pursue development and performance, analyzing and drawing insights on how teams should work. So this would be the main two that even if you are close to it, you cannot see because it's not the entire text here, but you can find it here under the table. These are the two areas where we consider, in regards to technology, that organizations should focus on in the next years. When it comes to barriers in enabling humans and technology working together, the rate of change, and this relates to workers' expectations, business, all sorts of other elements in this area of change, scored 44%. You can see it here. So it's pretty clearly one of the barriers that all the organizations are considering when discussing about technology and people working together. We must admit that in the last year, change in itself has been very present in our businesses and even in our lives. But what I found interesting here is actually that infrastructure and technology as a barrier scored 12% lower than at global level. And this being said, I cannot help in wondering if actually we are very satisfied with the infrastructure and technology here in Romania, or actually we are not yet at the stage where we can grasp in its entirely potential to see what we can actually do with technology. Data ownership. These are the results, and you can see here also based on the colors that skills is the preferred response for most organizations. At global level, the vast majority of business leaders, meaning 83%, believe that leveraging worker data to create benefits for both organization and its workers is important to very important. Yet, only 19% of them actually believe that they are ready to do so. The thing is that in order to make this change, it requires a lot of building trust between the company and its workers and confidence on how this worker data is used. And this cannot be a short-term project, this will always be a long-term project, creating this trust and connection between the parties involved. 27% identified culture as being one of the most common barriers. And it was also mentioned earlier that culture is very important, and it should come by having proper people in leadership positions, right? On this matter of technology and what companies are doing, the study, the Human Capital Report actually provides some very nice examples of what organizations are doing right now. And one of them relates to Schlumberger, who is implementing at the Center for Reliability and Efficiency in Texas a specific technology. And what they have done, actually they use a system that collects, aggregates, and anonymizes videos of their workers. Afterwards, all this data using AI is determining patterns on how the individual work and what they can do better. And for instance, using this technology, they actually identified the need to give all their workers more frequent but shorter breaks to avoid burnout. And this is something that they got only via technology and using artificial intelligence. Returning to local, Romanian respondents consider that both now and in the next couple of years, the data on worker skills is the most valuable in decision making, and this is how they align with one of my initial statements coming from the report, meaning that skills should replace jobs in the near future. At global level, however, the responses are pretty different, meaning that most of the respondents actually went for productivity as being the most valuable and not the data on skills, but on productivity. What is nice, however, to see here is that the personal values and priorities that you can see here scoring last currently are actually making top 3 in the next 2 or 4 years. And I think that says a lot about how the mindset of the leadership should change in the following period. And moving on to the last topic of the agenda, leadership. The study provides, I don't know, I think there are at least 5 or 6 chapters on leadership, so I strongly encourage you in the beginning to find the study online and to give it a read because it provides valuable information about leadership in general. When asked what leaders are doing today and what is the most critical role leaders need to play within now and in a couple of years, same logic, yeah? The answers at global level were very straightforward. They said access, engage, and develop talent. This is marked green on the slide. So you can see that Romania has a total different view from global. Locally, the current focus is on connecting teams, departments, and geographies. This is what you have here, current state, with a switch towards something else that we discussed today, inspiring and creating belonging. Actually, inspiring and creating belonging scored last on the global report, which is very interesting as well to see as a comparison how we are looking at things and how others might be looking at that. Of course, that you can interpret that both ways. You can say that they are already there, so they do not focus on that, or you can say that this is something that they do not need, do not have to act upon, or they are not considering, so they can be either in front of us or behind us. I would also mention here that harnessing disruption to create innovation still scores low. Although we have faced the pandemics, we faced the geopolitical conflicts, most probably this shows that we haven't yet fully embraced the capabilities that we have as human beings, as businesses, as organizations, to resiliate, to accept change, to adapt to it, and to always seek innovative solutions to move forward. One of the most important scores on this slide, matching with one of the main conclusions of the report, is actually that leaders themselves are resistant to change. And you can see here on the slide that 41 of the respondents consider that this is the greatest barrier in Romania. The percentage at global level is 35%, so it's not low either. This is something that should be addressed by the organizations. And if we were to conclude on the studies on the Romanian side, I would say that the current difficulties that the local organizations are facing are finding the right competencies and addressing the skills, yeah? And addressing the need to create an agile workforce structure. So the organization, I would say, what the studies shows is that the organization should focus more on co-creating the workforce ecosystems. This can always be further supported by technology, artificial intelligence, and so on, but I think the main thing at this stage is to create a workforce ecosystem using the resources that we have available on the market rather than implementing more and more technology that might or not be useful. The second one would be that when it comes to leaders, as it shows on the slide as well, their role will shift from connecting teams across geographies to creating this belonging that everybody was talking about. Everybody is talking about. How do we manage to create this feeling for our employees that they belong here and it's more than just a paycheck, as we saw in the presentation earlier. For this, I think the leaders need to significantly work on their own capacity to embrace, to explore change, and to find innovative solutions to move towards their employees and making them a part of their business. And since I am a tax consultant also, I will conclude with this. I think it's one of the important steps in having the employees feeling more related to their job and not only a paycheck, would be also the remuneration part. Yeah, I'm a specialist and most probably this is one of my daily concerns, let's say, and what I generally see in practice. But I can tell you from our practice that looking at the remuneration differently and tailoring it based on individuals' needs, making them, I don't know, part of the business, using variable pays, using tailored benefits in kind systems and so on, does help a lot to attraction, to retention, and even to the feeling of belonging. So this would be it from my side. If you have any questions, you can address them now, or we can take the promised break and we can discuss in private, as you wish. Thank you so much. Please. Yes.
Is this something we can find online?
Yes. Yes, you can find the study online. You can search 2023 Global Human Capital Report, Trends, Deloitte, and you will find it on Google. But I think we can also share it, Madalina, if we'll be sharing the presentation, I think that we will also be sharing the link where you can find it. And on that, apart this report that shows the human capital trends in general, I would also recommend on a yearly basis, we are also issuing a report on Gen Z and millennials. And that is very interesting as well.
Thank you so much, Monica.